Hello, and welcome to the Physical Therapy Owners Club podcast. I am Nathan Shields, and today I've got a longtime friend in my peer-to-peer network through the PPS, peer-to-peer networking program. We've been in the same group for a few years, and he's done some really cool stuff over this early part of 2022, and I want to share it with the audience today. But I have Ryan Wooley, owner, founder of Century Physical Therapy in Roswell, New Mexico. Ryan, thanks for finally taking the time to sit with me, man.
I appreciate you having me on. Glad we could schedule a time.
Yeah. You're growing and you've done some good things in part of New Mexico. Tell us a little bit about where you're from, what got you started into owning a physical therapy clinic.
Well, I'm from here, but I didn't live here for a long time. After PT school, stayed in Florida and had the opportunity to work for one of my professors there and learned a lot from him. And then my wife and I ultimately decided to move back home. And that's kind of a funny story because I didn't plan on opening a PT clinic. I actually moved back to New Mexico with the intention of opening an injury prevention business out in the oil field. Wow. And going out there and helping them decrease injuries, on the job injuries. And right when we moved back, I built a mobile clinic. I bought a big cargo trailer, built this clinic that I could tow behind my truck, dumped a bunch of money into it. And then the bottom fell out of oil and nobody would return my calls. Oh, and wow. Emily was pregnant at the time with our second son and bills needed to be paid and people in town knew me. So I was getting these random phone calls. Hey, my mom hurt this or my sister hurt this. Can you come take a look at them? And that just kind of started adding up. So I just started taking more clients and then finally got to the point where I couldn't go to their houses anymore. I was too busy. So I had to actually rent a building. Uh-huh. And from there, it turned into a business. And now it's me and 4 other therapists.
Wow,
so it
man.
Just happened. Yeah.
And how long has it been since that all started up?
7 years.
Oh, okay. And we've been in the group together for what, 4 years?
I think we're going into our 4th. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've always been super busy. New patients haven't been an issue for you.
Yeah. We've never had an issue with getting patients in the door. It's always been, can we find more therapists? Because, we do things a little differently here. So we stay busy. We have good outcomes and the patients are happy.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, the reason I wanted to bring you on today is because earlier this year, you switched your pay model for your providers, right? And it was just for providers, am I right?
It was just for providers, yes.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about that story. What made you think about doing that and what led you into doing it? Because I'm sure my title to the episode is going to be something along the lines of a pay-per-visit model, eat what you kill model, something like that.
Yeah, it was kind of
the germination of that.
The idea was eat what you kill in origin. The whole idea came to me because for the first time ever during COVID, we were starting to have problems with no-shows, right? And justifiably, people get sick, they get exposed, they don't want to come in, which is all understandable, but then they fall off the schedule and they fall through the cracks and they get forgotten about. And the clinicians were getting a little lackadaisical about any follow-up calls. Well, I'm just kind of used to this. My census is down, I'm getting paid either way. So, after about 4 or 5 months of that and really taking a pretty big financial hit, I decided I got to do something about no-shows. So I started with the front desk. What are we doing about no-shows? And they tried a couple of things. We're calling patients. We're checking lost patient logs. We're calling patients. And, the therapists were even cool with leaving home early and losing a couple of hours here and there. They just kind of got in this rut.
Really?
And so finally I decided, okay, let's kind of give everybody the risk. But if we're going to give everybody the risk, let's also give everybody the reward.
Yeah.
So I did the math. I'm not a computers guy. I got a yellow legal pad and I started writing things out and doing the math. And I kind of ran the numbers and I went to each of my employees individually and I compared, this is what you're making now. This is what your arrival rate was for the last 2 years. And so if you match that arrival rate on this pay model, this is what you'll make in the next year. And, their eyes got kind of big and they were kind of, okay, tell me a little more.
Really quickly, it wasn't just like you did a weekend thing about getting these numbers together, right? I mean,
I did. No, I had this idea probably on like a Wednesday, on a Friday when I was only treating patients for a half a day, I spent the rest of the day doing the numbers. And so I talked to him, I eased him into it, and wanted to get some feedback. And then the next week I came to him with a proposition, and I said, this is what we're going to do.
Okay. So you didn't come at him with the proposal right off the bat. You said, hey, this is something that I'm thinking about, and here are the numbers that I want you to chew on. If you just continue your current productivity level, this is what you could make on a different model, something like that.
So I showed him what my expectation has always been: 85% productivity.
Okay.
I said, if you meet 85% productivity, this is what you're going to make. If you meet what you've made in the last 2 years, which has always been a little higher than that, this is what you're going to make. Or if you do what you're doing right now, this is what you're going to make, which is a little bit lower.
Yeah.
And so I said, this is what we're going to do. I didn't give them a you're in or out question. This is what we're going to do. But I'm not going to implement it for 30 days. So you get 1 month to figure out how you can increase your own productivity. And you can do the math each week and say, okay, I saw this many visits this week. Do the math. This is what I will make on this new scale. Yes.
There had to be a little bit of fear.
Oh, yeah.
That they were going to say no and bolt, because I know your issues with recruiting providers has been difficult for the entire time you've been open. Mm-hmm. And wasn't there a little bit of fear that you had to get over where they might say, well, yeah, you're doing that, but that's not cool with me. I'm out of here. And how did you get over that?
I think that I showed them the potential, because I showed them the last 2 years of what they had been doing. And I'm going, you haven't been working all that hard the last 2 years. I don't, this isn't a patient mill. I don't make you double and triple book people. Mm-hmm. And I also showed them the pros and cons of it. By doing it this way, they have complete freedom over their schedule.
What do you mean?
They have complete freedom over their schedule. If they want to adjust,
totally manipulate it however they want, as long as they get it in the numbers.
They don't have to, the numbers reflect their paycheck. So they can manipulate it however they want. If they want to take a 3-day weekend and not work on Fridays, they can front load their schedule. If they have family come into town and they want to just work, noon to 5, Monday and Tuesday while their family's in town, they can do that too. I only requested that they communicate that with me. So that was a big perk, and a lot of them really liked that freedom, where I'm not saying, hey, it's 8:40, you're supposed to be here at 8:30, which I've never done anyway, but they want that freedom. And I think they took that as a big, as another big incentive. But
was there an expectation that there's going to be at least a minimum? Or were you just like, if you're going to make the salary that you made before, you just got to get the numbers in, and that speaks for itself. So you just let that do all the talking.
That's what it was. And I also knew the personality of all my guys, because we've all worked together for at least a couple of years. And I all knew that they, none of them are just give me something for free type personalities.
Okay.
I knew that they were all going to jump into it. However, none of them seemed to really take it very seriously in that 30-day buffer period. And for the first 3 weeks in there, they weren't really paying much attention to it. And the week before it started, I had to go up to a couple of them and say, hey, this is starting next Monday. Have you thought of any ways to kind of get your patients in the door? And, a couple of them gave me a look like, oh, I hadn't really thought about it. So they started brainstorming, and I would say the first week or 2 weeks implementing them, 2 of them had a little bit of trouble, and then they kind of figured it out. The other 2, man, they just took off. They went from like 15 to 20 no-shows a week to like 3. So their productivity just skyrocketed. And it's all because they now had control.
What did you see in their demeanor towards treating patients and how they talk to patients? Did you see like a night and day change, or just subtle differences here and there?
I saw subtle differences, whereas before, if a patient showed up 15, 20 minutes late and they were like, oh, well, he's going to have to reschedule. And now they're like, oh, it's okay. Come on back. I'll figure it out. Now they're willing to kind of make some accommodations here and there. Mm-hmm. There wasn't anything real drastic, though. They still treat patients the exact same way. I would say that they've got a little bit more creative in how they schedule their patients. In terms of your easy patients and your hard patients. If they've got 4 total knees in an afternoon and they're short on time slots, then now they're staggering them where they'll offset them 20 minutes and they can still do a really good job. Whereas before, my initial recruiting was, we're doing one-on-one visits. You do not have to double. And I still don't push them to double. But if there's a patient where they can easily double and it doesn't affect their quality of care, then they're going for it. Yeah. And it benefits everybody, and it doesn't hurt the patient in those scenarios.
Yeah, and the guys who didn't initially catch the idea and get caught up into the possibilities there for the first couple of weeks, was there any pushback during that first couple of weeks, or you just said, this is kind of what it is, you got to accept
No,
it?
because I kept going to them and demonstrating, hey, I'm concerned about you. I don't want you to take a hit for this. But I do know if you try, if you put a little thought into this, you can make it work. And, I've got one PTA that agreed to come on for a 1-year contract, and he's going on year 4 now because he's like, I can't make this kind of money anywhere else.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And what's people around the country are going to be like, well, you must be getting paid a ton per visit in Roswell, New Mexico. But I know you're not super high. Where are you at in New Mexico?
Well, our average is about 90.
Yeah. I mean, many places are better than that. And so,
a lot of places are better than that. And, our averages are 90 because we're still probably I think we're at like a 3.6 unit average, 3.6, 3.7. We're still not getting those 4.5 like a lot of clinics are.
That's true. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. And so people are going to ask some of the devils in the details type of stuff. What are some of now you're paying per visit, and there aren't any benefits on top of it. There's no paid time off. Con Ed maybe still a benefit.
I still give them $2,000 biannually for Con Ed. All right. So everybody still gets their Con Ed money, and they save it up. Usually they save it up for a really big course instead of taking that money and taking a few online classes here and there. Yeah. If they're going to get $2,000, they're going to take something that's worthwhile to them, and that's what I want, because I want them to be the best clinicians that they can be. Sure. So they get that. 2 of my therapists, when they first started, negotiated a monthly healthcare stipend. Okay. We're too small to offer health insurance. Yeah. So I think they get, a couple $100 just to go towards their health insurance on top of their paycheck. And no, and that's the funny thing about this, is that I thought I was going to get a lot more back push when I took away PTO. Because they all had PTO going into this. And I said, look, you're going to be making a lot more money. You have complete control over your schedule. If you're wanting to take a week off, then you work a little harder the week before you leave, and you work a little harder the week you get back, and you're not going to lose any money. And it's the same thing I have to do as the owner. I don't get PTO.
That's true.
So you just make sure you see the patients that they're taking care of. I mean, they're going to see 10, 15 more patients the week before they leave, and a few more when they get back, and it all evens out.
And do you have to, are they then contracted workers? Are they 1099, or are they still
one of them
employees?
Is a 1099 because he's always been a 1099. That's just the way he chose to do it when he first came on as an employee. He was a traveler who agreed to stay. Okay. And he became a 1099 because I was willing to offer him a higher rate at that, as a 1099. Sure. And then we transitioned. And so he's still a 1099, but all the rest of them stayed employees. Oh, okay. And that makes it easier. And so you have PTAs and PTs on your team, right? Yeah, 2 and 2. Yeah. And so what are your PTA per visit ranges, and what are your PT per visit ranges? Do you mind sharing? Yeah, it all kind of goes off of experience level. I mean, some PTAs can take on a lot harder cases that we hand off to them. Some cannot. So I would say that we kind of range in between about 26 to 32 for the PTA. And which they kind of asked me that whenever we first started, that's kind of what I'm making per hour. And I go, yeah, that's what you were making per hour. Now you're making it per 45 minutes. Yeah. And you're doubling that if you double book. So instead of $30 an hour, now you're making $60 an hour for those hours that, you feel comfortable, feel comfortable seeing more patients. And that math adds up pretty quick. Yeah. And then for the PTs, we're between the $40 and the $45 range.
Okay, gotcha. And is there any concern that maybe they're going to see some more of these patients and their units per visit stat might come down as they're pushing? Because they could be making more, but in turn, in seeing more, they could be making generating less revenue if they shaved off units here and there.
Well, yeah, and I didn't put anything in writing, but that was a verbal commitment that they all gave me, that they would get a minimum of 3 units, and we're always shooting for 4. So prior to us doing this, we were all still we're on a 45-minute platform, but our goal for most patients is to keep them for 55.
Right.
So that 10 minutes while you're wrapping up, the other patients are getting warmed up.
Yeah.
There's an easy 10-minute overlap there where it doesn't really affect anything. And I had a little bit of concern there. And I would say very rarely when I do chart audits do I ever find a 2-unit chart.
That's awesome. How long have you been doing this now?
I would say we're about 1.5 years.
Has it been going that long?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know. And
no, my wife will tell you that I have no concept of time, so I could be way off.
Yeah, because I heard you talk about it at our peer-to-peer networking conference, and I thought this was relatively new over the past few months. So
no, I've been doing it for a while, and
they're loving it.
Yeah, it's really funny because it wasn't one of those, it wasn't a brainchild that I put a lot of effort in. It was just like, this is something I feel like we need to do. I need to share the risk, and if it works out, I need to share the reward.
Now, there are some softwares out there that will help you set this all up and do it and take you through the pro formas of different pay amounts, and then, or maybe even setting up a minimum salary at $25,000 or $30,000 and then have a per patient thing. I mean, did you consider those, or did you just?
I did. And even the year before at PPS, Pratik and I had sat in on a lecture where they were doing a model like that, where they have a really low salary and then they get a I think they were actually per unit paid on top of that. And they had like 3 different variations. It was like per unit, per patient, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I looked into that, but I treat full-time myself. I don't have time to do that. So to me, it was just the KISS method. Let's keep it simple.
Yeah, right. And that makes it easy it makes it easy for them to figure out what they're going to make in a given week, right? And they can look forward in the next week and say, man, if all these patients come in, I can make this much money.
Yeah. And it keeps it really easy on my scheduler. It keeps it really easy on the lady who does my payroll, because I just have to shoot her hey, this is what we're doing now. And my other company, the home health company, it gets a little bit more complicated because I pay per visit type in home health. So that's where it gets a little bit more complicated, because they get paid a set amount for a start of care, a set amount for a progress note, a recertification, a resumption of care, and a daily note or a discharge. And so then I have to go in whenever I send payroll over, I have to delineate what type of visit it was. Not a big deal. But they also like that because they like to see, hey, if I take on these, I'm going to make a little bit more. Like my PTs like to go in and do progress notes for their PTAs because they make a little bit more in the same amount of time. And it's not much more paperwork.
And you don't differentiate that in the clinic. Like if they do an initial eval, it's the same as a regular
It's the same. Okay. And it's the same amount of time too. They get 45 minutes for an eval. They get 45 minutes for a treatment.
Oh, okay.
And
it seems like you implementing this has gone rather amazingly well. Were there any hiccups or hurdles along the road that you had to smooth out?
No, there really weren't. It's kind of funny. I had one therapist that I lost prior to doing this who I was paying like that. And she just she wanted more than she could generate, unfortunately.
Oh, okay.
She came back at me after a year and was like, I want this much per visit. You're barely going to generate that per visit. So it's not going to work.
How did you determine those per visit ranges? Did you go back and maybe see what your payroll would have been in previous months if they were meeting these numbers? How did you fall in those ranges? Because someone who listens to you, who happens to be like you and getting in the $90 per visit range, might be able to just use your same ranges. But if someone has a $115 per visit reimbursement or a $75 per visit range, what was your formula?
My formula was mostly geographical. What are most places getting reimbursed in Southeast New Mexico, and what are they paying in Southeast New Mexico? And I wanted to be able to pay a little bit better than most of them because I want to be competitive. Staffing has been my biggest issue as we grow.
Right.
So I have to be able to pay them a little bit better. And then, what are they making compared to what we're making? And obviously we're kind of in that same range. We're actually probably a little slightly lower because most places are getting 4 units, if not more than 4.
Oh, okay.
But we've got a waiting list for patients to come in because we don't treat the way that they do.
Yeah.
We're not seeing people every 15 minutes and running it like a patient mill. We're actually, spending a lot of time with people, and people are getting better. So I think it all works out in the end when you do your quality over quantity type deal.
So you tried training them on how to get better compliance during the initial evaluation and how to talk to patients when they cancel, and training the front desk and what to say on the phone. Some of those meetings don't have to happen anymore, I assume?
No. They don't have to come from me anyway.
I see. Yeah.
I've trained all of them. I've talked to all of them about it. And now whenever I have a therapist who's getting a lot of no-shows, they're a little bit more responsive to just jump up and say, hey, I need to call that person. They were supposed to come in this week. Why didn't they come in? And you go get on the phone. Where before they used to run up to the front desk and ask our coordinator, hey, call so-and-so for me and see if they can get scheduled. Now they grabbing the phone themselves and calling them.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it makes a lot more difference whether or not that patient is going to come in if they get the phone call from the therapist versus
it's true.
The clinical coordinator.
Yeah. And so what has been some of the bottom line benefit to you? I know that number one, the ease with which you have to manage your team has decreased, especially as you're considering no-shows. But overall, what has been the benefit for you?
I think just the overall energy in the clinic. I think everybody's a lot happier. Nobody feels like they're being forced to come to work. Nobody feels like they're being told what to do or how to do it. They have a lot of autonomy now, and it shows in their demeanor, how they communicate, and how they treat.
Is that something that, as you've recruited, you've highlighted, and if so, is it something that has weeded people out and maybe not looked into your clinic, or have you noticed any of that?
I can't say I've noticed a big one. Because I don't jump into those type things right away whenever I'm trying to interview a new candidate. I want to find out if they are of the higher standard that we are.
I see.
That we expect first before I just start saying, hey, you might make 6 figures if you're really good. I don't want to do that because I don't want to entice the person that's only motivated by money. Yeah, everybody wants to make a good living, but they also want to, if you're in this field, you're obviously, and especially if you're working in an outpatient, you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how you define outpatient therapists. They know they're going to make a little less than if they were in a SNF or a hospital or home health, but they really love what they do. So we want to make sure they love what they do, that they are dedicated to being really good at it, and then, that make sure that they can make a good income.
What do you think it's done also for the patients? Does it seem like compliance and maybe your completed plan of care percentage has improved, or the episodes per plan of care, have you noticed if any of those stats are better or overall results are better?
I would say there's one negative I have seen maybe is that some patients haven't gotten discharged probably as soon as they should or could
they might have.
Some of them, they might get a few extra easy visits out of them from time to time. And, I can't say their primary motive there. Is it because they need a little bit more safety education in their home exercise program, or they're not really diligent with doing it and the therapist wants to make sure that they, get that last little bit? Or is it a combination of both, and then they've got somebody that's really cruises and they can bring them in.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, there is a benefit. I mean, it's one thing to get 100% better, but we all know after discharge there's going to be some regression. So
there always is.
Why not get them 110% better so you can work in that regression after discharge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There can be some benefit to
So I can't call that a negative, but I would say it's different than what it was before. Whereas before, if we were really busy, that patient might actually have gotten discharged a little bit sooner than they should have.
I've seen
because
that.
The therapist just couldn't find a place for them.
Yeah. They're like, oh, you're doing well enough. So even though it's 8 out of 10 visits, we'll just say it's good now instead of going to 10 out of 10 because I'm too busy and I don't want to do any more documentation that I've already done. Yeah. I can totally see that. Yeah. And also for the financial health of the clinic, I'm assuming that's a little bit better because metrics are better.
Metrics are better. Metrics are better overall. And surprisingly, I thought we would take that dip in units per visit. We didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
So units per visit have stayed about the same. And, I used to really push people whenever we were having those, 20, 30 no-shows a week. I'd be like, hey, you guys, if your next patient cancels, keep them an extra 10 minutes, get that fourth unit.
Yeah.
Which I never really felt good about doing.
Yeah.
I'd always follow it up with, keep them an extra 10 minutes if that patient will benefit from it.
Yeah.
But now they got kind of used to what they had to do, and they're just doing what they need to do.
Oh,
and so
awesome.
they get a combination of 3 and 4 units, and I would say most of the time it is more ethical, and they're doing it because that patient needs it.
It's appropriate.
Yeah, it's appropriate.
Cool, man. Anything else you want to share about your experience with this? You shared a bunch of detail that I think would be helpful for those guys or girls that are listening. Anything else that maybe comes to mind about the program that you might want to share?
Not right off the top of my head, because like I said, it's not a legitimate program. It's just an idea that I had that I wanted to keep really simple and implement. So, because sometimes you can over-engineer the wheel,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it. It is that it is rather simple. And I think it is so simple that people might want to make it more complicated than it needs to be.
I know initially I had a couple of backup ideas. If this didn't work, we can try this, we can try this, we can try this. And I'm really glad I didn't have to implement those. I really am.
Well, and I think one of the smart things about how you laid it out, and I mentioned this at the very beginning, is that you took the time to do the numbers and show them, and not just tell them this is what we're doing in 30 days, but hey, FYI, we're going to talk about this next week. And hey, FYI, here's some numbers I've run your numbers for the past 3 to 6 months at past or current visit levels and past visit levels, depending upon your efficiency levels, right? 85%.
I think that's vital. If you just drop this on them cold, they could run for the hills. Easy. But showing them what they've done and showing them, I'm not making this up. This is a printout from the EMR system. Yeah. This is what you've been doing. And this is what you've been doing, just on your own. Nobody telling you need to do this, this, and this. Yeah. That means you can continue doing this without very much effort. And you could probably do better if you just try to implement a few new strategies.
Yeah.
So they took that, and I think that it gave them the motivation and probably the self-awareness that I can do this.
Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of it is that you did keep it so simple and talk to them through the process and showed them exact numbers. And the fact that it came to fruition and they've seen their salaries, quote unquote, increase because of that, it's been beneficial and obviously successful for you. And just from my experience, I don't know if you talk to other people that have used these models for reimbursement of their providers, but those people who do have that eat what you kill model, rarely, I don't know if I've ever heard someone say something really negative about it. The providers tend to really get into it and really appreciate the fact that they have that autonomy, responsibility, and control over what they can make. Yeah,
and they like the freedom too. Yeah. I mean, they love being able to just take a 3-4 day vacation when they want to.
Or, and hey, I need to go to the dentist. I need to go to the dentist on Thursday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. Give me a 3-hour block. Yeah. And you know what? So-and-so, she really can't afford to miss. So when I get back from the dentist, I'm going to see them a little later. And they do that.
That's kind of
cool. do that. Yeah. I was surprised that the schedule didn't change hardly any at all. They were used to the times that they came in. They were used to the times that they closed. And I never told them that they couldn't change any of that. And it's stayed virtually the same. Now, every once in a while, there is that 3-hour block to go to the dentist or, to take the dog to the vet. And more than anything, the only thing that ever changes is either a Monday or a Friday when they just want to take a whole day off.
Oh,
the rest of the week just has stayed completely unchanged for the most part.
Last question, and again, it's just more detailed stuff, but do some of your patients switch hands between providers? And will a patient maybe see 2 or 3 providers during the course of care, or are they pretty strict with the one provider?
We tried to stay really strict with one provider, but we've just gotten too busy. Okay. So there will be a switch between PT and PTA. We kind of have teams.
Oh, okay.
So if they're going to work with me, then they're going to see my PTA. If they're going to work with one of the other PTs, then they're going to see that PTA. and then they're not seeing multiple people.
Because you have that, I'm assuming your PTs and PTAs kind of work together on the schedule.
They work great.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
They work very good. Now, and there are some patients that just don't care who they see.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We all communicate. It's a small enough clinic that we communicate. Hey, Mrs. Smith didn't like this last time, so let's stay away from that and try this. That communication's really good.
Again, thanks for sharing. I think it's awesome. And I think a lot of people are going to be inspired by the information that you shared today. And if there are any people out there that are looking to move to New Mexico and have the autonomy,
yes, please give me a call.
How can they get in touch with you, man?
Well, they can always shoot me an email. It's wooleypt@yahoo.com.
Okay.
Wooley's WOOLEY PT@yahoo. Mm-hmm. And then our number is 575-622-6260. And I'm laughing because people always throw out a website and I don't have one.
I have tried to look you up online and I couldn't find it.
I had a terrible one for like 3 or 4 years, and I was looking at the numbers of how much traffic we were getting and were they actually resulting in referrals, and it wasn't. And we had more referrals than we knew what to do with, so I just quit messing with it. I do have a page on Facebook that I haven't updated in probably 3 years. So apologies to the people out there who are techie and think that everything has to go through social media. I'm just too busy.
Yeah, understood.
So you could look us up on Facebook, and that could you could always send me a message that way.
Okay.
But anybody who's out there and wants to have a really fun and place to work and have the freedom to be an autonomous therapist, that's what we're doing.
That's awesome, man. Well, hey, again, thanks for sharing, Ryan. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate your time.